Hello everybody, welcome to this video. It's another in the Student Exemplar series. You guys are really enjoying this series, so am I. So I'm going to continue making videos in this series as often as possible. And as you know, if you send your work to info@mrbruff.com and it gets featured in a video, I will send you a copy of my guide to English language and a copy of my guide to English literature. Lots of people are sending me work saying, can you mark it, tell me how to do better. That's not what this series is about. I'm getting hundreds of emails, so I couldn't possibly do that for everybody. What this series is about is if you've done a piece of work and it's got a really high mark, send it to me and we'll have a look at it and sort of pick it apart. So this is a piece of work by somebody who wants to be known as LC. And the question is, compare how poets present the effects of conflict in War Photographer and one other poem. So let's get right into it. Both War Photographer and Poppies present the effects of conflict on those who are not directly involved in war. So as you know, there are no marks awarded for an introduction, so a one-line introduction is all I recommend. Just get a very quick overview of what you're going to write about and then straight into it. The four stanzas of War Photographer are uniform, with each having 6 lines and an ABB-CDD rhyme scheme. This tightly controlled structure can be seen as a reflection of the tight structure of war, but it also could reflect an attempt to put order onto the chaos of war. This, however, is a juxtaposition, as the effects of conflict are uncontrollable, which is seen by the photographer's hands, which did not tremble then but seem to now. Likewise, Weir has used free verse to present how the mother is unable to control her inner emotions and lets them run free and overtake her as her son leaves. Both poets try to present through their structure the effects of conflict are uncontrollable. Now this is a nice paragraph, quite a brief paragraph, but it does explain in both poems how structure is used to reflect the uncontrollable aspect of conflict. I would have liked to have seen the paragraph start with this sentence. I've said before lots of times I don't want to get to the end of the paragraph before I understand the point being made. So the first sentence in each paragraph is your topic sentence, and it should succinctly explain what the rest of the paragraph is about. And I would have left it there like this for this paragraph. Poppies uses enjambment to show how the effects of conflict are also consuming as well as uncontrollable. They saturate the mother's world as she is unable to escape, turned into felt, slowly melting. The line break reflects the mother breaking emotionally as her son leaves her, and this hurts her so deeply that it is all she can think about. Weir repeatedly infuses domestic language with military language to convey how the mother's grief has overtaken her life and is in everything that she sees. Sellotape bandaged around my hand instills to the audience how even simple tasks such as removing fluff are a reminder of the conflict. The adjective bandaged has military connotations and reminds us of wounded soldiers, but it is also used to present the mother's suffering. The poem Poppies is part of a collection entitled Exit Wounds, and the author effectively conveys to us how damaging the exit of her son from her life is through words that connote suffering such as spasms and graze. Now, this is an interesting paragraph because every idea in this paragraph is good, but there are clearly two different things going on in this paragraph, and I think there's a division here. There's the idea of the enjambment and what that presents, the sort of broken lines reflecting the broken state of the mother, and I think that's a very good idea. And then there's another paragraph about the use of domestic language and how domestic and military language come together. The sellotape bandaged around my hand is the quotation from my revision song. If you've not seen that, look in my playlists on revision songs because I've got a quotation for every poem set to a backing track, a hip-hop track. So I feel like these are two different ideas in this paragraph. Now, could they be combined into one idea? Or the introduction, again, the topic sentence suggests this paragraph is about enjambment, and then it moves on to language. So I would actually have two separate paragraphs here. What we have to be careful of with the poetry, I think more than anything, is that our work doesn't read as 5 or 6 isolated paragraphs of 5 or 6 isolated ideas. The sort of feeling that I get a lot when I read poetry work is that a student sat there with their anthology and just kind of working through each annotation, writing it up into a paragraph. And that's okay to a point, but for the level 6 mark, for the highest marks in the poetry, you have to have this cohesive and coherent line of argument, which is the idea that you have a sort of a theory or an idea which you explore throughout the entire answer. And I think, this is reading as very solid analysis, but it doesn't seem to have that overarching theory, which could be, that the sort of poems present the domestic front, but infuse that with pain and suffering to suggest how everybody is affected by war. And then half of the answer would be about how the domestic imagery is there, and then the other half of the answer would be about the sort of imagery of pain and suffering. This is reading as a very strong, for me, a level 5 analysis, because it's very good, but it doesn't have that sort of line of argument tying it all together. So we've done that one. Duffy, however, contrasts this idea and instead presents how easily the public can isolate themselves from the effects. Her friends Dan McCullen and Philip Jones, respected war photographers, likely inspired this idea. The internal rhyme used in Tears Between the Bath and Pre-Lunch Beers, which is another one of my quotations from my quotation rap, increases the pace of the line, and this is representative of how quickly we're able to forget about the horrors of the war. This is emphasized by the use of the preposition between. It conveys to the audience how the tears are momentary and the public quickly move on to something else. To further this, the caesura used to isolate rural England conveys to the audience how the people could separate themselves from the 100 agonies in black and white because they do not care. This is confirmed by the cyclical structure of the poem. Things never change because people do not care. The war photographer, however, who sees all 100 agonies rather than 5 or 6, is trapped in his dark room, a metaphor for his mind. Now, this for me felt like the perfect paragraph until here. Whereas I said in the previous paragraph it felt like two different ideas were being sort of wedged together. In this paragraph, the ideas are different, but they all complement each other. So the idea of the internal rhyme is further explored there, and that's a structure point, but it's further explored with the same quotation and then some language analysis on that quotation about the preposition, which is further backed up through the use of caesura. So all of that is really, really good. At the end, there's a mention of the cyclical structure, but that isn't explained, and it's not an obvious cyclical structure, so it needs to be demonstrated. What do you mean by the cyclical structure of the poem? And I'm not sure the last sentence really adds anything to the analysis, but a very, very strong piece of the answer there. Despite the differences, both poems present how the effects of conflict should be remembered. The simile, as though this were a church and he were a priest preparing to intone a mass, is used by Duffy to present how we should not forget the lives lost. Mass is the ceremony in the church that is used to remember Jesus Christ. The photographer uses the solutions that slop in trays and the red light to perform his own mass. The images produced by his mass suggest to the reader that the innocent lives lost will be remembered, even if only by him. Similar ideas are presented in Weir's Poppies. Poppies is the symbol used for Armistice Sunday. The noun is used both as the title and in the opening line, which immediately focuses the reader to consider all of the lives lost in war. This juxtaposes the dramatic monologue form, which takes away the son's voice, so that we only see the effects the conflict has on the mother, and the use of juxtaposition causes the reader to rethink their connotations of poppies, as typically we only remember those directly affected by conflict, not those indirectly involved. Now, I feel like these ideas here are good, but are drifting off the wording of the question, the effects of conflict. I suggest in your poetry answer, you say the effects of conflict, or whatever the wording is of the question in every paragraph. Here we said how the effects of conflict should be remembered. And I think it's quite a long paragraph that just drifts away from that topic of the question. So be careful to make sure everything you write is answering the question. It's the biggest challenge with poetry. Don't just write all the clever stuff you know about the poetry, but answer the question. Overall, while both Whilst both War Photographer and Poppies instill to the reader the effects of conflict are uncontrollable, Duffy presents the idea that people are able to separate themselves from the tragedies around us, whilst Weir portrays how even those not directly involved are consumed by the effects of conflict. Both poems do, however, highlight the significance of remembering the effects that conflict has. So that would have actually been a nice introductory idea for the line of argument. So it's about the uncontrollable nature of the effects, yet people are able to separate themselves from them. However, they should remember. So it's sort of that both poems present how people can separate themselves, but how they shouldn't separate themselves from the effects of conflict. Would have been a beautiful line of argument. A very strong answer. Really, really good, and I hope you enjoyed the video. Please do subscribe to the channel.